You're watching Morning at NTV.
All right, welcome back and thank you for staying with us right here on Morning at NTV. Our Kickstarter conversation is focusing on the plight of refugees in a time of COVID-19. Now, remember, every 20th of June, the year 2020, we honor the strength and courage of refugees and who are actually undergoing a lot of challenges during this time of COVID-19. And we also have reliable information that even before they were having the same challenges, which were actually rather expounded during the coronavirus pandemic. It's on the 20th tomorrow, but today we are actually observing the events that can actually tell us why we are actually observing World Refugees Day. The day offers a chance to raise awareness of the plight of refugees around the world and of efforts to protect their human rights. To speak to us about this and more, we do have Ms. Mary Njeri, the Refugee Response Director at World Vision Uganda, and she joins me right now via Zoom. Ms. Mary Njeri, a very good morning and thank you for joining us on Morning at NTV.
Good morning to you, Romeo. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Ms. Njeri, help us understand what makes this day, which is tomorrow, World Refugee Day, most significant for the refugee community?
Yeah, thank you so much, Romeo. As you said, the World Refugee Day is such a big event for refugees, and it's a time that we use as agencies, as the UN agencies, and all players in the humanitarian sector to raise awareness about the plight of refugees all over the world, and also to celebrate their courage, their resilience in the face of all the things that they've gone through. But this year is different because it is happening amidst a huge social dramatic change. Mm-hmm. And we've seen that unlike in the past events, we have the World Refugee Day celebrated through gathering masses, people from different communities, and they gather together to just celebrate this day through song, through dance, and it's usually a very merry day. And we celebrate diversity, we celebrate culture, but this time that is different because we are not able to gather, we're not able to travel, to be together. And so it will be celebrated on a very low key, unlike in the past.
Unlike in the past. So how are you navigating this to celebrate? How are you celebrating at such a time of COVID-19? It's low-key, but how are you going about it?
Yes, recognizing the importance of this day, agencies like World Vision have gone ahead to see how to go around the current challenges. And one way we are doing this is to work with children from different communities within the settlements to train them and to also provide them with mobile phones, so that they're able to go within their communities, collecting stories, so that their voices will still be heard by the world. They will still be able to express how they feel at this point, and they will feel involved, and the day will still matter to them. Thank you.
Ms. Njeri, what is World Vision Uganda doing to actually help these refugees stay in school at such a time of COVID-19, or at least access materials that can help them with their education post-COVID-19?
Yeah, thank you, Romeo. So at this time, World Vision is joining forces with others, the governments, UN agencies, other partner agencies, the communities themselves, and the children, first to create awareness about this COVID-19. We realize that once people have information, then we are able to reduce the spread of this disease. And if that happens, then our communities remain safe. So one of the things we are doing is to use every platform we have, be it radio talk shows, be it megaphones, just walking door to door through the settlements and raising awareness about the COVID-19 and how people are able to prevent the spread through doing the various things, including hand washing. Secondly, we as an organization realizing that things such as soap, which may seem very basic, are not so common and so available to the common refugees there in the settlements. So we are distributing soap, and starting with the most vulnerable families, and also to institutions such as health facilities, so that people are able to continue washing hands, and this we believe is going to limit the spread of the disease. We are doing other things such as providing masks, gloves, and infrared thermometers to health facilities, to other institutions so that people accessing these facilities are able to get services, but also the health workers are able to remain safe. This is so far what we've been doing, but we hope to move to a second phase of our response.
Ms. Njeri, help us identify key strategies on how best women, young girls and other vulnerable groups can be best supported during and post-COVID-19.
Yes, post-COVID and even going forward, we realize that COVID has had such a huge impact on the lives of people. First of all, like girls who've been in school and our children who are now at home, they require to continue learning. They continue to continue play even at home. So some of the things we'll do, one is to provide learning materials so that they're able to use this at their homes and to keep up with their education. We provide play items so that children continue enjoying play. And this is such a meaningful thing for them, especially those who've gone through trauma. They need to continue playing, and this helps them overcome whatever trauma is happening even now. Yeah, the other strategy is to provide them with livelihood opportunities. And one way to do this is through cash transfers, so that people are first and foremost able to afford basic items that they may not have right now, but also that this is money they can use to revive or start small businesses that will be able to earn them an income. And so they are able to continue providing for their families. Other short-term measures include provision of items such as seeds, vegetable seeds, realizing that they require to supplement their meals. And so these are seeds, we train them and offer them so that they are able to grow them around their households and they can supplement their meals, especially at a time when their food rations have been cut and they really need all the help they can to supplement their feeding. Thank you.
And also, Ms. Njeri, help us actually highlight some of the practices, best practices, and the lessons learned during the COVID-19 response, actually, and also how the recommendations on improved service delivery. What are some of those best practices that you've actually realized during your quest in refugee response, and what are some of those recommendations to improve service delivery? Best practices, share with us.
Yeah, one of the best practices that has been happening is the coming together of all partners, realizing that everybody can make a contribution and everybody has a role they can play. And so we've come together, the government, we've come together with UN agencies, we've come together with other NGOs, with the communities and with children to do all these things that I'm talking about. And you realize that, for instance, when we do social community awareness through community structures, through children, and through governments, the message gets to more people than if one was working alone. So teamwork, collaboration, I think is one of the good practices that we have had. Secondly, is what I've already mentioned, is working with the refugees themselves. Because in any time, if you want to help someone, then work with them. And this is what we've been doing. And we realize that their involvement and their voice matters so much to their colleagues. So we've had like the Refugee Welfare Council members participating in radio talk shows. And their people pay attention to what they are saying, and they will do. If they echo the guidelines that are currently in place to prevent the spread of COVID, you realize that their people now pay attention because one of them is talking. When we have a child sensitizing people in the settlements on hand washing, on social distance, you realize that they listen and they do better. So that is another practice of a best practice of working with those affected to provide support. Thank you so much.
Ms. Njeri, what major strategies should be considered in mainstreaming gender in the humanitarian action for COVID-19 response during the crisis and beyond?
Yeah, we realize that COVID has affected all people, and strategies need to be in place to support the different people differently. For instance, we've seen a lot of sexual and gender-based violence in homes because people feel redundant, feel helpless. Some, they do not have anything to do, especially like the men. And so any strategies to help should start with specific gender for specific interventions for specific gender. For instance, men would require a way to regain their income to be able to support their households. And this is why we are saying some things such as providing training, providing cash transfers would help them to be able to restart their businesses or to establish small income generating activities that are able to provide for their families. People like women, they also have been very much involved in raising their family and providing. And this was saying one of the things that women care much about is being able to provide food for their households. So things that providing seeds, seedlings, they are able to grow something and use it to feed their families. Children, we've seen them also stay at home and feel like neglected even. And so to engage them, helping in learning, to continue learning, to engage them, to continue play, and also to help in small chores around the house. So these are some of the strategies that we believe should be embraced by all.
Of course, Ms. Njeri, some of the refugee women are also complaining that the men have not given them enough power to actually control their own lives. The women also want to be in the refugee response management of the refugee camps or the settlements where they hail from. Instead of only focusing on the smaller issues, they also want to be involved in decision making. How best can that be integrated in the refugee response so that these women can be empowered to make decisions on their own?
Yeah, thank you so much. And women are majority in the settlements.
83%.
Yeah, yes. So, and their voice matters. And like you say, if they're involved in refugee management, then they would have meaningful contribution. So one of the ways is that to sensitize them on the role they can play. Sometimes women put themselves down. Sometimes they feel like they need someone to invite them to the table. So they need to know that they are welcome to share their views. And some of the things we do as an organization is to ensure their participation. So that if you're having a meeting, if you're having a training, these women are there also. They are part of it. And once they are there, we also ensure that they get an opportunity to speak, to say their voices. In the committees we have within the settlements, be it food management committees, be it the child protection committees, women are part of it. And in fact, you would find that we have more women than men in these committees. So what we are doing as an organization is to build their confidence, to help them understand that they can have a meaningful part to play in their management of the refugee welfare issues. Thank you.
Ms. Njeri, do you have to sensitize the women and let them know that they have a right to actually be involved in these decision-making processes, or do you have to put pressure on officials from the Office of the Prime Minister to actually put in place structures that can allow women to freely participate in decision-making and so take over their lives? Ms. Njeri?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Both strategies should be able to work. What I know is that, like, for instance, when we are recruiting, when the Office of the Prime Minister is electing the Refugee Welfare Councils, which is one of the management structures within the refugee management, this is done through election. It's a free and fair exercise. And you will mainly find men fronting for the job. So I believe that as much as we want to create space within the Office of the Prime Minister, these women also need to be built to know that they can go for these positions and that they actually will have a meaningful contribution. So we'll work on both strategies, but I believe first, if these women are driven to go for it, I think that will make a big contribution.
And of course, Ms. Njeri, we are getting verified information that refugees have continued to pour into Uganda since 2019 in droves. South Sudan, 50 people on a daily basis. When you go to DRC, that's 200 people coming into Uganda on a daily basis in South Sudan. And help us understand, during this time of COVID-19, have you gotten information with regards to these unaccompanied children continuing to stream into Uganda, and who is taking care of them? What is the situation like at this time?
Yeah, Romeo, you understand that during this COVID period, the borders are officially closed. So
yes, but at the porous borders, we are hearing information that some refugees are actually sneaking into the country. And if they are and the country is on lockdown, who is taking care of them?
Yes, yeah. So the communities are very much alert on people coming into the communities. And once they do, the information is passed on to their leaders, the local leaders within the refugee settlements. And what is happening is that we have systems, a process we call case management, so that every unaccompanied child, every child at risk has an opportunity to be first of all identified, and then they are monitored. As World Vision, we have, and working with IRC and UNHCR, a project, for instance, in Yumbe, where we are managing children, unaccompanied and separated children. So this is done in collaboration with community structures, a structure we call child protection committees. These ones are involved in the identification, in the monitoring, in the reporting, referral, and follow-up of these children to ensure that they have access to the services they require and that they remain safe. So this is one of the way we are doing it. The Child Protection Committee is actually made up of people living within these refugee settlements. So they are within and they are able to have information and to follow up. And I believe this is one of the structures that are really working within this period.
And of course, later on, Ms. Njeri, I'll be talking to the Speaker of Yumbe District Local Government, that is Ms. Charity Farida, and she'll expound on that situation within that area. But then let's talk about some of the challenges you've grappled with in your quest to help refugee communities, and also help us understand how the government and what kind of support they can render to you and other development partners.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, indeed, there has been some challenges. And the biggest challenge continues to be the minimum, the very limited funding available for support to refugees. So that when we are talking about thousands and thousands of refugees, the support available is usually very little. And so what we have to do over and over is to prioritize the most critical cases. While you understand that refugees are really almost on the same level and all requiring support, most times you have to really prioritize, come up with a criteria so that you're able to reach at least the most vulnerable. So limited funding has been a big issue. And this is a call not only to the government here, because I believe the government, first of all, by just setting large and welcoming these refugees into the country, has done a great part. It's more a call to donors, to private sector, to individuals, that we support these refugees, especially so they can be able to access the basic services. So that remains the biggest challenge. Of course, this COVID-19 situation has been and is a big challenge, because even things that we were able to do previously are now limited. For instance, movement to the various settlements, being able to engage with communities in groups, this is now difficult. So this pandemic has not helped issues and has restricted our movements and our ability to access and support the refugees as we should. Thank you.
And I also understand, Ms. Njeri, one of the other challenges that you might be grappling at this point in time is the testing of all the refugees in the settlements in Uganda. That number is not small. We're talking about 1,423,377,000 people right here in Uganda. That's a huge number. And let us in on that process of testing and what you are doing, the measures you've instituted to ensure that you protect all refugees in the communities right here in Uganda.
Yeah, you said right. The refugees, the numbers right now, 1.4 million refugees in Uganda, and quite a bit of that within the West Nile region. So we realize that testing, even for the rest of the country, mass testing is expensive. And so that's why we are really, as a region, as a team here, really working more on prevention, because we realize that prevention will really go a long way in ensuring that people keep safe. And one of the ways we are doing this is through creating awareness, so that people are aware how can they keep safe, how can they continue to protect themselves and their families so that they are not part of those infected. And the other way is to ensure that the various health facilities that are here are able to serve the communities even at this period. So mass testing, I do not know that it would be the best way for us as in this refugees location, especially given the numbers, but working with prevention. And I know there are health partners who are screening and who are picking up contacts and ensuring that any cases that is suspected is followed up to the final end. And this is happening very efficiently. This is something that is already working. And we believe that if we keep it this way and we keep surveillance high, the way it is happening within communities, then we are able to survive this COVID situation.
Yes, Ms. Njeri, focusing on the young women within the refugee camps, we are also getting information that many of them are getting into forced marriages, number one. Many of them have lost their incomes. Many of them are engaging in prostitution. Many of them are engaging in drug abuse. Also the young boys. How dire is the situation within the refugee camps now, especially that Big Brother, the big RU, the development partners and government officials are not in these refugee camps? You're actually working remotely from very far. How bad or how dire is the situation in the refugee camps, away from prying eyes?
Yeah, Romeo, thank you for the question. First, to say that we are not very far. We are not working as remotely as maybe you believe. We are in these settlements. The OPM is in place, UNHCR is in place, and all of us agencies, myself included, we are accessing the settlements on a regular basis. Maybe not as often as we used to, but we are doing this. And one of the things that is happening also is to work with the community structures, as I said, the child protection committees and other teams working within these communities. So to start on your question there about how dire is the situation,
Yes.
there are many issues coming up, issues of sexual and gender-based violence, issues of child labor, issues of early marriages, and other harmful coping mechanisms, things like prostitution, because a situation, you realize that the refugees were in a bad of situation even before COVID. They were struggling to meet their basic needs, their daily needs. It was already hard. But now, with COVID having stopped whatever small enterprises they were doing, whatever movements they made to the local markets and to elsewhere, things are worse. So we've seen cases of sexual and gender-based violence rising. And one of the things we are doing is, even as we pass the message on COVID awareness and how people are able to prevent, we also now are taking the time to speak to communities about protection of the vulnerable people, protection of women, protection of children, and reminding them that these are crimes that if someone is engaged in them, then they should be able to meet the full force of the law. And also working to identify such cases and to follow them up to ensure that people get their rights. So the cases are there, but working with community structures, community teams to ensure that we monitor, we follow, we report them, refer, and just ensure that these cases are attended as they should. But apart from that, is what I was talking about, support with livelihood interventions. Because if a woman is going out to prostitute herself so that she's able to provide for her family, we are looking at how do we support her with some cash so that she's able, first of all, to meet her basic needs, and also to once the situation is better, she can start an income generating activity. And so she's able to continue supporting her family.
And of course, I have less than a minute, Ms. Njeri. Maybe before I let you go, let's share some recommendations on how best we can inculcate new measures within Uganda's refugee response program to improve it, and with a keen focus of inculcating gender mainstreaming in our humanitarian action.
Thank you so much. So going forward, I mentioned one of the best practices has been the coordination that is happening, and that this is something we need to continue doing as agencies, because together we can do more. And what we want to see also going forward is to have interventions that are gender specific, so that every man, every woman, every boy or girl is supported in the way that really matters to them. And this will involve us assessing situations and adapting our interventions to respond to the needs of every gender. We are talking about imploring donors, that we have these refugees, and I know a lot of pledges were made at some point, how we will support refugees to be able to be self-reliant, to be more resilient. And these are things that we are saying now more than ever, these pledges needs to come real. And all donors, governments, and every person who's supporting such interventions, this is the time to come in with sufficient funding so that we do meaningful projects that are able to help the refugees move from where they are right now, able to survive and even thrive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary Njeri, for that insightful conversation. We humbly appreciate.
Thank you so much.
Mary Njeri is the Refugee Response Director at World Vision. And yes, you've had the conversation. Refugees, prior to World Refugee Day, that is tomorrow, the 20th of June, a slew of events have been set up to ensure that we honor the strength and courage of refugees. In the same light, I shall be hosting another show between 3 to 5 p.m. To compound on that situation with the members from the Office of the Prime Minister, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and United Nations Women. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back. You're watching Morning at NTV.